Hello everybody and welcome to video number 5 on this series of videos on how to write an MDD reader. At this point we have finished writing pretty much all the code for the actual node that handles the deformation. However, we have not tested it. We don't know if this is going to run, and from past experience I can pretty much tell you that it's not going to run. So at this point we're going to go through the process of debugging this until we can get it to run. So usually the first thing I do is I try to run it just off the bat and see what happens. So I already have a Maya session over here, and on this Maya session, if I bring this up, let me make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to read. Remember, I had set the Maya plugin path to the location where I'm saving my Python file. So once that is set, I go ahead into the Maya location and I run Maya. So this is my Maya, and here I have a little bit of mail that I'm using to quickly iterate. And basically what I'm doing is I'm forcing a new file. I'm setting the playback range. It's not necessary, but I know that my MDD file was only 24 frames. And then I do an unload plugin of MDD and then a load plugin of TDC MDD. So this allows you to unload and reload really quick. This kind of thing, I'm not 100% sure if it's going to work on Windows, like this unloading and reloading without having to close down Windows. But in Unix and in Linux and in OS X, you should be able to unload and reload a plugin no problem. Then what I'm doing down here is I'm doing a file import. I'm importing an OBJ file, which is what I had exported from my host application. Then I'm going ahead and I'm creating a deformer. So basically I'm calling the deformer call. I tell it the type, and the type is MDD read, which is what we are building. And then I give it the shape that I want to deform. And this is something that I figure out by just trying a couple of times. And then finally what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the attribute called tdcmddread.mdd file to the MDD file that I have on disk. So I'm going to go ahead and try to run this really quick. So let me select it all and function return. And then, okay, so something went wrong. So let's start looking. Let's see, deformer, okay, error, invalid syntax. So basically, I think when he was trying to run the file, here, when he was trying to run this file, it ran into a syntax error. So right now, there's no errors in logic or data access or anything. We have plain old syntax errors. So we need to figure out a way to fix those. So the way I usually fix that is I create a new tab or a new shell, and I'm just gonna go over here. Let me show you. Let me bring this like this so you guys can see a little bit what I'm doing. So I have a couple of tabs. One is where I have my code, and the other one is this right here. So what I did is I navigated to, let me show you the path, to the location where I have my code. So if I do a list, you'll see that's what I have. And then I try to use just regular old Python interpreter to see what it tells me. So if I do Python TDC MDD Py. So as you might know, Python, the first thing to do is it tries to compile it. So at that point, it's going to make sure that your syntax is correct. If the syntax is not correct, it's going to fail and it's going to tell you where. So at this point, I can see error is on line 39. And it says if self file handle and node self handle. So that node doesn't look right. So I'm going to go over here and look for line 39. And here it is. So this needed to be a not. So not. Let's give it a read. Run it again. And then it's complaining about line 53. So we go to line 53. This line looks correct, but the line on top, I am missing a closing bracket here. So I'm going to go ahead and close this parentheses and run it again. And now at this point, it's complaining about a module. So there's no more syntax errors, at least on the global scope. So it's trying to evaluate this, and it doesn't know what OpenMaya is because, in this shell we don't have the environment set up. That's something that, you know, we could do, but we're not going to. So at this point I should be able to go into the scene file and try to load it again and see what happens. So I'm going to go over here and go ahead and clear this area, and we're going to try to run the plugin again. So let's see what it is. So name error. It failed again, as you guys can see over here. We have our little guy, but it's failing. It says name error, global name cephal is not defined. So that's absolutely a typo. So we go up here and you can use your search, and I'll just do it right here, cephal. And it takes me to the one location where cephal was. So I can do self, and then I can do that search again. Cephal. Oops, actually I searched for self, so cephal. And it tells me that the pattern was not found. So I should be good. So we go back into Maya again. Go over here, select everything. And then it tells us list index out of range. Okay, so this is probably a little bit harder to figure out. So let's see where we're getting this error. And my first inclination is it's probably somewhere in this function right here, load data. And we know we're calling this once inside the deform method right here. So I'm going to go ahead and try to capture what's coming out of load data. So I'm just going to add a couple of print statements here. Let me do print frame. I want to know what frame I'm getting. Then I'm going to do print self.points, because I want to see, you know, what number of points were initialized, which, remember, load data, that's what it's going to initialize. And then I'm going to do print len, because I want to get the length of self.deltas, and I'm going to do frame. Right, so this is going to give us the length of the list that is stored under the key with the current frame number under delta. So this is going to give us some information. It's probably going to crash again, but hopefully it will shine some light into what's going on. So we're going to go down here. Let me clear this, because when it accumulates too many errors, it's a little bit harder to read. Go down here, select everything, run it. Okay, so we see that frame is returning the value of 1, which is the frame where we are, but points is returning 0, and the length of the number of points stored in that delta is also 0. So that seems pretty screwy. Let's go up here and let's look at points. So points is usually initialized up here on the first part of the load data. So it's usually on this line, and you can see here, okay, I was doing self.point. So we need an S here. So let's go ahead and change that. Go back here. Where's the rest of Maya? There it is. Run this again. And voila! You see our little guy changed position, and now he is in this other pose that I did. My awesome animation skills, as you can tell. So I think we are good pretty much. So now you can see here, okay, frame is 1. The number of points is 12238, and the length of the current frame of the number of points stored in that dictionary is also 12238. So at this point, the things seem to be loading. So I could go over here and delete this guys. Give it a save. Let's run it again. Let's go over here and okay. There's a couple of warnings over here, but they're not really what we're doing right now. I mean, I don't think they have much to do with what we're doing right now. So it is set. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the time forward to see what it does. So over here in another Python tab, I have this over here, and actually I'm going to go ahead and copy and just let's do it on the same mail tab, because I don't want to go through the process of explaining what the other thing is doing. So if I do this here, I think this is how it works. You do set adder time 10. Would this be correct? Yeah. So you see our guy moved. So as I move this to let's do 20. It's moving still, and I think it's going to move to 24. So if I do 28, it's not going to move because we are already outside the range. If I remember correctly, I don't know if I went through this, but the little animation we had was from frame 1 to frame 24. So it went ahead and, you know, it's not giving us anymore because we are outside the range. But if we go over here and we look, we have our MDD read here connected to it. And what happens if I click on cycle? Okay, so here there's another error. So it's telling attribute error, TDC MDD has no attribute called frame. So that's another error I did. So it's good that we check most of the things. So cycle is broken right now. So let's go back again and check. And I remember exactly where that is set. So it is set right here. And that's the error. Instead of doing self.frames, I did self.frames. So we save that. Go back to Maya. Run this again. And it seems to be working now, I think. Let's go ahead and do our cycle. There you go. So if you're on cycle, it will stop at the last frame and it will just hold that, you know, to frame 28. If you put on cycle, it's going to return it. Now let's try offset. If we do offset of 1, it's going to move forward. Offset of 2. So you can do 10 and it's basically offsetting. So at this point, I think we're pretty much ready to roll. Things seem to be in place. There's a couple of more things that we need to do before we wrap this series of tutorials. The next thing we're going to do is create a set of commands that will allow us to do something like this. And man, I wish that there was a way to view this a little bit bigger. I don't think Maya does give you a way to make things bigger so you can read a little bit better. But basically this line right here, and let me comment this out because that's the next thing we're going to test. This line right here, TDC MDD read minus n whatever foobar, and then all these flags. Basically this is this would be a new mail command that you're defining, and it is designed to handle and create and modify MDD reads. So you don't have to do deformer anymore. You would be using this command to create a new MDD read and conform to how Maya usually works. You know, when you want to create a new object or something, you create a command, and if you don't give it the query flag, it just creates it. If you give it the query flag, it queries it, and if you give it the edit flag, it edits it. So we're gonna go through the work of making that work. Added bonus is once you do that, it's also available in the Python tab. So that's it for this video. We are gonna take a break right now and come back with the development of our TDC MDD read command. Thank you very much. See you guys later.